Hello, War of the Visions newbies. This is Suspect Amy, and I'm here to do a quick video about how I view early game team building and team makeup. I know you guys are like, ugh, not another newbie team building guide. There are dozens of these out there. And you're absolutely right. But judging by Reddit, new players keep asking about team building, and they still continue to get overwhelmed. I'm hoping my team building guide can be way shorter and simpler than the ones out there. Here goes nothing. Let's start with my old original video on this subject.
Second, it's important that you make sure that each hero on your team is a different element. When awakening a hero, they will use a lot of the same resources that another same element hero will need. So having 2 win heroes on your team will strain your resources.
That was 3 years ago, back when there was only like 10 characters per element. Things are way different now. 100% you should start with a single element team. A quick disclaimer, there is a recent movement to build teams away from single elements and towards specific weapon types, and I've seen some really strong showcases. However, this isn't really recommended for someone new to the game. So why is a single element the way to go since my last video? For starters, the game made farming materials and building units much easier than 3 years ago, so there's less of a need to conserve resources for the same element. Also, there are now 241 characters in the game, so this should mean fewer duplicates in your pulls. Now you can more easily fill out single element teams than in the past. That reminds me, I have another video in the works that covers all of the free, easy to level units in the game. These are perfect for rounding out the last spot or two on your mono element teams, so please subscribe if you want to know when that video drops. Let's talk about how mono element teams affect your vision cards. Think of this as all the vision cards in the game. They're grouped into different sets, some buff-specific jobs, some buff-specific weapon types, but the ones newer players should focus on are these 2 groups here. Elemental vision cards will only pass buffs onto units that match a specific element. There are universal vision cards with 0 restrictions on who will receive its buffs. We like to call these rainbow vision cards. If you're running a mixed element team, your party benefits mostly from the rainbow vision cards, requiring you to try to summon for a small batch of very specific VCs. But if your main team are all ice units, for example, you can take advantage of both ice vision cards and rainbow vision cards, making your first set of strong VCs easier to obtain. Another reason single element teams are better is because your account gets elemental buffs based on how many units of that element you have leveled up. As an example, if you focus on leveling up wind units, then all wind units get stronger as a side effect. Speaking of which, don't hesitate to spend a few resources awakening and leveling low rarity units for your main element, even if you don't intend to use them. And last but not least, every character in the game gains their own masteries, once at level 40 and again at level 80. These boost teammates of the same element, and this power absolutely stacks. To show how strong this is, here's a single win unit, and he's buffing himself with his unit masteries right now. If you add a second wind unit to your team, you can see that everyone receives the masteries from both characters now. Add some more units of the same element, and it's pretty obvious how this can get really powerful. Now let's talk about which element is the best. There actually is a clear answer to this question, but before I get into that, let me cover what the elemental strengths and weaknesses look like. Here's a really dumb example using these 2 elements that everyone already knows, but trust me, it helps explain why I think specific elements are better than others. As we're well aware, water deals higher damage than usual against fire units, and on the opposite end, fire units deal lower damage than usual to water units. This pattern is the same across the board except for 2 elements, light and dark. In this scenario, light deals unusually high damage to dark, but dark just turns around and deals high damage right back to light. Since dark and light don't necessarily have an element that they deal weak damage to, by default, these 2 are considered the strongest elements in the game. You might be saying, oh crap, I've been playing for a couple of weeks and my strongest element is water. Now my account is screwed. That's not the case at all. Teams of every type of element do extremely well in PvE and pop up frequently in Guild War and Arena. In a few short months, you will have several strong mono-element teams that you can pick and choose for different situations. The end goal is the same, have a strong team for every element. Having a slightly weaker element to start is not a big deal at all. Finally, let's talk about team makeup. I think in my old video from 3 years ago, I broke down recommended roles into something like this: tank, support, attacker, attacker, attacker. Is this still true in 2024? Not so much. Now, every account starts the game with 3 top-tier level 120 URs and a random level 99 UR. Regardless of who these units are, you can easily auto the entire story with this group. You can clear normal EX missions in your sleep as well. The only tricky part is when it comes to brutal difficulty missions. For these missions, at least until mid-game, you typically need a hate-generating tank. Generating hate is how one unit taunts enemies away from the rest of your team to keep them alive. In many high-difficulty missions, all this unit does is taunt the enemy, run into the fray to get beat on, cast some defensive buffs, taunt again, rinse and repeat. Just keep the enemy's focus while the rest of your team cleans up. What's surprising is, this tank unit doesn't even need to be a high rarity. MR tanks are easier to level and fill their role shockingly well. Don't be afraid to bring in MR units in a pinch. I'm not saying you shouldn't build support units. Many supports dish out decent damage as well, so I always encourage having one on the team if you have one built, but if you don't, that's fine. They are not required for most content. Anyways, I hope this guide helps some new or returning players get back into the swing of things. As usual, if I'm off base on anything, please leave a comment below and I'll try my best to correct it in a future upload. That's all I have for today. Thanks for watching my video. Bye everyone.